All right. Coming to you live directly from the past, because we're pre-recording this, from Mindmasters, Claremont. Yes, we can't record things in the future.
Live from the past.
But you can't be live. I'm confused.
We are
Quick,
currently
somebody make a
live,
theme
to be
song
fair.
Yes.
and put it over him.
We do need a
Live from the past, from Mindmasters, it is I'm Invested, a podcast where we're probably going to talk about Marvel mostly, but I imagine we're going to dip into other things
Oh, I'm in
quite a bit.
I'm incapable of focusing on one topic at a time. So
obviously from the conversation we just had.
yeah, good luck.
Just the warm up.
But
So
we're
yeah.
taking the I'm Invested from WandaVision. We're going to talk about WandaVision tonight and eventually talk about other Marvel things that are coming up on Disney Plus. But we wanted to start with WandaVision because it's like so hot right now, and I had started watching it and just sending so many questions to James, who is here, Emily's here, Michael's here, Pam's here, Joel's here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm James.
Yeah.
He's the guy that introduced you. I gave you his theme song.
I'm Emily.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Pam.
She said, and I'm not even here. I'm Joel.
You've been precluded.
Yeah.
And I'm Pam. That's
I
it.
didn't
That's all
mean
the
it. It
people.
wasn't
That's
that.
it.
It was just a statement.
There's
by
no
itself.
other person in this room.
You could have yes and that. I gave you every opportunity to. And I just had so many questions for James at the time, and then I started thinking about other people who might have answers to my questions or thoughts about WandaVision, and so that's why we're all together here. Do not listen to this podcast if you've not watched WandaVision, because
All the way through. If you've
Yeah.
not watched WandaVision, all the way through.
Well, up until right now, what are we at? 7?
Seven.
Seven.
Episode 7
Yeah.
came out last week.
And,
Live
Okay,
from the
yeah.
past.
yeah,
Yes.
yes. And I'm
So-
invested. I've been up the last 2 Fridays at like 3 or 3:30 because I happen to wake up and I watch them. And by the way, they don't have names of episodes at 3 or 3:30. They're just called episode 6 and episode 7. At that
Oh,
time.
really? I didn't
Yeah.
know that either.
When I
So when
started
I wake
watching
up the
them,
next
I might
day to
do that
watch them
next time.
with her,
I'm like, what's the name of this episode?
yeah, I go, oh, this one's called.
Yep.
And in this case, it was called. Was this one breaking the fourth wall?
Yes,
Yeah.
this one was breaking the fourth wall.
So that's been interesting for me. So right from the very beginning, the one thing that I got online and that I noticed, and I've read a lot too, and that's been, so some of the things haven't been surprising for me, but one of the first things was the first 2 episodes, and people just being like,
Oh, really, really just being Debbie Downer about
Debbie
it.
Downer about it. I can't.
Gosh.
Really?
I
They
know.
won me over immediately.
Yeah,
But
I was.
Okay, good.
Oh,
I
yeah,
was
no.
right into
we
it.
were the same,
Oh, yeah.
But
same boat.
I
Okay,
definitely had seen people that were mad about it right away.
Yeah.
Well,
And
like-
I
Like,
didn't
you know it's
understand.
not just gonna stay that way, and if it did, it'd be still kind of cool. But
Yeah.
Honestly, it was
You
fun.
know something's going to happen.
Like-
and,
That
like,
being said, coming off of the kind of instant gratification of Endgame, like
Yes.
where that whole thing from start to finish was just yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes.
I do
yes.
think it's weird to call a movie that the seed started 10 years prior
No, that's
instant gratification. But
I
I do
know.
get what you're saying.
Yeah,
And
like
what somebody said that I found interesting is that y'all waited 10 years to hear
Did that.
Cap
Was it-
say,
was it appropriate?
Yeah.
Avengers Assemble,
uh-huh.
and you can't wait 2 episodes to see what's happening with
But
I
again,
think-
yeah.
And by the way, you should have watched all the movies previous to this too, because we're
Yeah.
going to mention
It was
those.
like 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
They're
I know.
30-minute episodes. They
They're
were
not
funny.
long.
They were cute.
They have
I
Yeah.
thought, but then
Charming-
they were one.
charming
That's the word.
actors. Like,
Oh, yeah.
The acting is
Yeah, their
fabulous.
chemistry, the two of them.
Oh,
I
It's
mean,
incredible.
Paul
And their
Bettany and
timing.
Elizabeth Olsen.
She's amazing.
Oh, just
And she reminds me of Emily.
I was gonna say, I
They just
think
made
I
a
feel
face
like I'm
that makes
stuck in
this
your
sound.
brain on this because you keep thinking I look like her.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do a little bit.
I do.
Like I
do
could see
think
you
that-
as a Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
Nobody sees me as a vision.
you're a vision in my eyes.
You are.
Um,
But their comedic timing is amazing for both of them,
Mhm.
acting, and anybody they cast. Jumping a little bit forward, I complained to James when the kids went from being like, what were they, 5 to 10?
oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I was like, oh, I don't like those 10-year-olds nearly as well as I like those 5-year-olds.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they did the Halloween episode.
And
Oh.
they
They
did,
got
and they
their
did a great
powers.
job with
And
that.
then they did the episode Breaking the Fourth Wall, and those kids looking
So
at
we'll get
her
there.
as she's losing it. I'm like, these little 10-year-olds can act.
Well-
Hold on just a minute. You turn me around. And now they're gone. I don't know. No, but they
Are they?
Well, yeah, are they gone?
Are they
Like,
gone? We don't know.
Well, one of the things I also think worked really well for WandaVision and has continuously worked well is the style that they're choosing. The having it be the TV sitcoms
Yeah.
is perfect because it's reminiscent of, and I'm a comic fan. It is reminiscent of a Vision run where, in that particular run, it is just Vision. There is no Scarlet Witch with him. But it is very reminiscent of that run where Vision envisions having his own family in this very 1950s era sitcom world.
And I'm familiar with some of the parallels, like Sparky and like
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
That was his dog in that Vision,
Mhm.
Yeah.
air quotes.
Wait, is everybody aware of this? I was not.
I looked it up.
It's a-
I
yeah,
didn't read
it's-
it. I looked it up.
Yeah, it's
He
it's
had a
a
life
older
without
comic.
Wanda.
Well,
He had a whole in the comics. He has a whole life
Oh,
that's not
They've
with
both
there's
Wanda.
a whole
had
thing,
runs
yeah.
with and without each other.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
I feel like I mean we're doing it pretty late, but I don't know if we've given so much of the premise here. You were saying in the beginning, I don't know if we recorded this or not. Pam is doing, basically she's interviewing us. She's the interviewer, and the
Yeah.
last person in the room, and she. But the idea was like you keep saying like, oh, I'm the fish out of water. I'm the fish out of water. I'm basically asking you guys because you guys are the ones that know. I want to make it very clear. I also do not know.
Okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
we have two fish out of
which
water
is-
here.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I've only
balancing.
read.
I feel like I'm half in and half out of the water.
She's a
Like,
pro.
Yeah.
I'm a
Amphibious.
little bit of both.
Yeah.
I'm a little more versed, but I'm definitely not an expert. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
And some of this is just opinion. What you think of it? Like.
Oh yeah, and
Definitely.
that's the other thing is that like Marvel has shown time and time again that knowledge of the comics does not
Is-
equal knowledge of what's happening
Yeah,
or
they're
going to
not-
happen.
Sometimes
Um,
it's just a nod and a wink, and sometimes it's a direct pull.
The Mandarin, obviously being a big example.
Yeah.
I
I'm not
thought
gonna-
that was fantastic.
hated it.
I loved it
And I just
so
talked about
much.
that.
Deep into my soul, I hated it.
Okay,
Yeah, me too.
fair enough. But again,
you and I just talked about that.
Yeah.
Our least favorite movie, pretty much.
Yeah.
oh wow, I loved Iron Man 3 so much.
Iron
Ah.
Man
Hot takes.
Yeah, hot take.
3. Yeah.
I liked Iron Man 3, darn it.
Two was Mickey
Mandarin
Rourke.
is 3.
Two was
Whiplash.
Mickey Rourke.
Whiplash, Justin Hammer, those were all 2.
Yeah,
At the
two.
Stark Expo, where War Machine is introduced.
See, the problem is that I genuinely, like, I don't think there's any of these movies that I dislike at all.
Yeah, I like them.
In
You like
any
the
capacity.
ones
The
that you
first
like.
2 Thor movies.
The first one Thor movie is kind of slow for me, but I like it enough.
I don't have a
Dark
bad
World I
time.
really enjoyed. I feel like I'm the only person on earth who can
No.
say that.
I like it better now that I've watched them all.
I have a lot of thoughts on that if we're going to go in this
Well,
direction. But this
well,
might carry us too far away from.
Well, we'll get into that because we need to for the
So-
for Loki.
So
coming
to continue
In
the fish kind of thing,
True that.
I think where are we? Because we've both read comics,
Oh, yeah.
so
yeah.
that so I think we are definitely like the ones deepest in this lake.
and I
Oh,
just look
yeah.
things up.
I've read some comics, but
I've not read
a lot.
comics,
Not
but I
Yeah.
a
look
lot.
things up on the internet, and you're just
I
like
have some series that I like.
like. You,
No, I know.
and you have opinions,
I've
and you're
kept up.
kind
I've
of
kept up with movie stuff at least.
yeah.
No,
you're familiar
I'm just
with
if
movie
there's
writing.
any comic book stuff that I know, it will be in the DC side of things. So that's
Well, that's-
we might dip later. Into
We're in the
yeah,
same
we'll
boat
talk
there,
about
That's
too.
fine.
No worries.
I've also actually I got my start with DC.
Me too.
First thing I read was Arkham Asylum: Living Hell.
The
All right,
very
cut this guy's
New podcast.
Yeah.
No, it's gonna
No,
happen.
let's do all of it. Like
I have to leave.
It's gonna happen.
I'm invested can expand
It will
into
expand,
things
but-
outside of Marvel as well.
It can,
Yes.
but it has to be WandaVision first because
Yeah.
that's my like.
That's what
That's
we're
what we're
all
at.
my
talking about right
obsession.
now.
So
Yeah.
it made me watch every single movie again.
Yes,
And what I was going to say is I've watched some of them multiple times, and I like some of them more than I did the first time, including Age of Ultron and including Thor, because Kenneth Branagh is one of my favorite directors and actors, and I took that as a whole Shakespearean thing. And they almost, if you look at it like that it's a little bit
Yeah.
better.
Well, I love the first Thor a whole lot, and I don't super dislike the second one. But,
He only dislikes Ragnarok.
okay, I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna, we'll get to
Ooh,
this in
okay,
later
let's hit
episodes.
this.
Oh, hold on.
We'll get to this in later episodes, but I do think they overcorrected because I guess
No.
Thor 2 wasn't well received
Mm.
comparatively to other Marvel movies, and so
Yeah.
they changed directions so hard that it was, whiplash for me.
Okay, I feel that.
I particularly love Taika Waititi. Like, I already liked his work, so I was knew what I was going into when I went into that film.
Yeah.
So I was expecting a fun time,
Mhm.
and I got a fun time, and that's what I wanted out of it. And so if you didn't know who Taika Waititi is, and you weren't familiar with his work, I can see how it would be like, what the heck is this
Yeah.
type of a
And
movie
it's just
for
midway
somebody.
through the series, like we already had 2 movies, we know what the tone is, and now it's like, no, that was not it. That
Well,
was
Well, they had to
that's
set him up for, like I said, as Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
You can't set up the
highly
interaction
prefer-
without that.
And
I
like I said before, I also don't like Guardians too, so we'll get to that.
I
That-
really like letting Chris Hemsworth have his comedy chops because he's a very funny comedic actor,
Yeah.
He is.
and letting him go loose like that was
Yeah.
a much better
Yeah.
decision
Yes.
than keeping him reined in the way they did.
Oh,
I
it
feel
is-
like
Yeah.
they
He did good comedy before. I just think Thor had a different approach to comedy in the first.
I was gonna say, if you say
Well-
anything about the new Ghostbusters and
What?
comedy.
Oh no.
Was
Well,
he in
Yeah,
yes,
he was in
Yes.
the-
yes, and they all
See,
bragged about how
Hold
he
on.
spent like 3 hours improvising a scene, and it was so
Well-
funny, and it's like, but that's not how.
improvising works?
Yeah.
As improvisers, we know that.
Here's the thing. I love the third Thor movie. Ragnarok I thought was fantastic because one of the problems that I had with the first 2 Thor movies is Thor is a ridiculous character. He is absolutely, in the comics, he is a ridiculous, like outside of knowing the character, and I do love the character of Thor, he's objectively ridiculous. He is a Norse god
Oh, just compare.
who
Okay,
speaks
yeah,
in thee,
That's
thou,
absolutely
all these different Old
Shakespearean,
English,
almost.
and he is a ridiculous character. And what they did to him in the MCU is they got rid of a lot of that. Like, he doesn't speak with the Shakespearean tones. And they made his first 2
I'm
movies.
sorry. I feel like the humor in the first 2 movies was that he kind of does that, and we all poke fun at it.
A
And
little
by the
bit.
third one, he's just like, "Alright, bro, I'm just Thor. Look at my surfer hair."
Yeah, a
Just
little
like,
bit.
He's not even, like,
And granted, a little bit, but they also make his tone
That's what he
so
said.
serious all the time in the first 2 movies, especially in Dark World.
But that's the comedy of it. Like he's like,
I-
"I'm Thor, son of a," like you're gonna, and then he has no powers, and like they beat him up, or whatever. And it's funny
well,
because like you're
yeah.
poking fun at how serious he is. That's where the comedy comes from.
Yeah, but then I think I personally like see, and you mentioned that specific scene, the I am Thor, and I look at the same scene in Ragnarok where he says, "I'm the god of thunder," and he gets the sparkle hands, and he goes, "Oh, what were those sparkles?" I think that is a much better, much funnier version of that initial scene. that's fine. You can have your opinion, and I get where you're coming from.
It's okay.
I understand where you're coming from. I don't know. They were so dark, and then you compare him to characters like Cap, which did have a funny side, and Iron Man, who's obviously snark from top to bottom.
Stark.
Did I say? I did say Stark. I said Stark, who is snark from top to
Oh,
bottom.
No,
gotcha.
It was a little
No,
fun play on
He
words.
was trying to make a play on words, and we all got confused.
We did a great job. Comedy. But and then to just have him be so, from my opinion, comparatively bland in his standalone movies was, and it's everybody has
I see
their
where you're coming
opinion.
from because the second one felt bland, but I
Yeah.
don't feel like that's what we were set up for in the first one. It's just
No, and
we just,
that's
If it was up to me personally, I would have let Taika Waititi have the whole series from the beginning, and I think it would be good.
yeah.
I-
if we could go back in time.
I don't
Yeah,
think I'd
exactly.
be upset at that point. If it was always the
Yeah, because
tone.
I personally, I feel
Zany.
like Chris Hemsworth kind of got a disservice in the original Thor movies because a lot of the other actors that got to play principal characters, Cap and Tony, they got to infuse a lot more of their own personality and choices
Okay.
into their roles. Like Robert Downey
Iron Man
Jr.
definitely did. Yeah, that's like.
is inseparable from
Yeah.
Tony Stark in
Yeah.
our
And
minds.
it's causing problems for him now.
And Chris Hemsworth like looked the part, but he didn't really get to insert any of his own decisions, I don't think, in the first few Thor movies or Avengers. Like, you could just kind of tell that he felt more in control of funny Thor, like, than... I think that was more of Chris Hemsworth contributing to it as well, not just Taika Waititi's
That's a
choice.
fun- yeah, that's a fun way to
And
look
so
at it.
I like it. I think it was a good choice to let Chris Hemsworth do a little more. Because, like, every actor, I feel like, has gotten to put a little bit of their character, themselves into each character and
Yeah,
be a little more
spin.
inseparable versus just being the face of that character and having nothing to do with the personality.
Yeah.
The thing,
Very true.
again, still off topic, but
We're not on topic.
Yeah, we're not-
Yeah.
we haven't been on topic at all. That's okay. But there's a thing at the end of Endgame, an extra to watch it. It's I think casting of the MCU. It's about 20 minutes. It's fascinating. You get to see the auditions of Robert Downey Jr. and you get, I think, exactly what Emily hit on is what they were pulling from them and why they chose certain people for certain roles, and you see them auditioning, and the great thing is you see people auditioning for other roles that they didn't get.
Oh yeah.
And that's the fascinating part, but she remembers everybody.
Like,
She remembered every single person, and then she would pick them up if she thought that they were
Oh,
right
yeah.
for another character, which is brilliant on her part and why casting is so good.
the one that I think is so fascinating, just on that, is Tom Hiddleston originally came in for Thor.
Yes, I
Yes.
did know that one.
And
yeah.
that one I think is
Which
such an
I can't
interesting.
Which would have been
No,
a totally
absolutely
different
not.
characters.
Sebastian Stan originally came in for Cap.
Mm.
And they talk
And-
about
Yeah,
that
she
now.
He wanted to
specifically
be
mentioned-
Steve
Wow.
Rogers.
She specifically.
She said he had there was a little bit of darkness in
Darkness,
him,
too
so
much
she's
darkness.
like,
So
Yep.
she couldn't
Oh
do
wow,
it.
if that wasn't the epitome of when
That's it.
Winter Soldier was written.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're basically Cap, but you just got a little bit of darkness in you. Like, and I mean, I love the Winter Soldier
And
character.
she talked
it's
about the fact
fantastic,
that Cap had to have that like just that. I don't remember what word she used. It's like it's just Chris Evans built in
Yeah.
has that honor or that
yeah,
just his.
He's much more all-American looking.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, and-
in his countenance
And
than
just the way he
Sebastian
acts.
Stan.
and he
Yeah.
does have a weird earnestness
The
Yes,
about
earnestness,
him
definitely.
as well.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's America's butt.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Like
So,
and here, like what she was saying about them bringing in themselves into the characters is like a really, really good point, because Robert Downey Jr. saved Marvel. Like, that, not just the movies, but the comics and all of the, like, the casting of him as Robert Downey Jr. saved Marvel.
Yes. That is what he did. Don't correct that. That's
like-
exactly what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes,
it's
Robert
like,
Downey.
because, and I've had this conversation with other people before, Robert Downey Jr. is a fantastic Tony Stark. He is a terrible adaptation of the comics version of Tony Stark.
Yes.
Which is
because do you know how
great.
little I cared about Iron Man before this?
Yeah.
Because he's a terrible character. Half of the times he appears in the comics alongside the Avengers, he is the principal villain. Like,
and they
His,
talked
his
about
own
the fact
hubris.
yeah.
that they
Yes.
weren't sure with, just so you know, I'm giving a little bit of away, but you still have to watch that extra, that they weren't sure because he came in with issues, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And here we are, we're gonna cast, well, Disney didn't own Marvel back then, but we're gonna basically, or did they?
No.
No, they
No.
didn't own Disney.
Okay, so they were
Disney
just like,
didn't.
these are
It was-
family-friendly movies technically, are we gonna count on our whole thing being based on this guy who, and they're like, when you see him audition and they talked about him, he was the main guy that they wanted, and Favreau
Yeah.
definitely
And Stan
wanted him.
Lee.
Yeah,
I mean, and there's a point even to be made that Stan Lee, because it was very, very widely on record how much Stan Lee wanted Robert Downey Jr. for the role. And it's very kind of telling because Stan Lee knew Robert Downey Jr.'s past, and he also, obviously being one of the writers of Marvel, like, he was involved very deeply in the writing of the character Tony Stark as an alcoholic, as a drug addict, as a jerk, and so to give the opportunity to play that character in a brighter light to somebody who has gone through the drug abuse, the alcoholism, the crime and the punishment side of that, and let him take that character and make him such a wholly likable and lovable character and the center of a universe.
Yep.
There's a lot to be said for that as well. Stan Lee's opinion on both the character and on the casting of it.
There's a fine line between an insufferable genius and a sufferable genius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Robert Downey Jr. knew how to make a character that is, from the comics perspective, terrible, like just a terrible human being, and make him likable, lovable, and a hero.
Put people on his side, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
In that, and talking about WandaVision, and for one thing, Paul Bettany with his amazing comedic timing and the whole thing.
What
But-
amazing that you want to talk
where he's
casting.
come,
Yeah.
Starting
From,
as a voice.
Yeah.
I saw a thing about, it was a quote from him and from Robert Downey Jr., but it was him saying, Paul Bettany, as like, I used to just come in, I'd record like 2 or 3 hours of dialogue, they'd throw a big bag of money at me, and then I'd go about my day.
Yeah.
And now I actually have to put on clothes, like put on a costume and come in here.
Yeah.
Show up.
But
Yep.
they
then-
were talking about the fact that somebody made this point, and I think it's a very valid one, after watching Ultron again, where, the beginning is the part where everybody's trying to pick up, I can never say it, the
Mjolnir.
hammer.
Mjolnir.
Thank you. And,
Or as Darcy calls it, Mew Mew.
yeah. And at one point he's saying to them, after he's created, he's like, I'm not Ultron, I don't even want really Ultron dead, but because he wants everybody else dead, but I'm not what you created. And he's like, but either way, we don't have a lot of time. And he just smoothly just hands the hammer.
Yeah.
Just
And
watched
they're
this 1
just-
hour ago.
I'm
Yes.
on the side of life
Yeah.
is one of my favorite
Yeah,
quotes from any Marvel
and just
movie.
that movement, he just
Mhm.
grabs it and hands it to him. Well, somebody pointed out when he's trying to get out of the hex and he's out, he's not saying "help me, save me." He's saying "help save all those people
Yeah.
There's
inside."
people in there,
Yes.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's a hero.
So he's not just an elevator, he is truly...
He's not
No,
an
yeah,
elevator.
he is-
He is
yeah.
truly
Put
worthy.
the hammer in an elevator, it still goes
They-
up.
Okay.
They were
Vision
just
is-
saying that to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
were, of
they
course,
totally were.
they were.
Which
At the end, though, in Endgame, like, I think
course.
James might have screamed louder than
Because I've been
anyone
waiting
would.
since Avengers for Cap to pick up the hammer.
well, and here's the funny thing. I think in Age of Ultron he could and
James
chose
just said that.
actively not to.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
That's
something
what
that we've all discussed. Yes, he totally could have. He did not want to bring that on board.
Yeah,
at
'cause-
that
'cause-
point.
like,
And we see
it
that in
budged
Endgame,
first.
how
It wasn't
fragile
like towards
he
the
is.
end of him moving, like
It budged
like the
first.
first thing he does is move it a little bit, and then it stays still.
And then he's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah,
you
but
can't
you
do
get
it.
And
Oh,
Thor's face is fantastic.
Oh yeah, the immediate drop
Priceless.
of the
Drop.
smile, and it kind of goes into what we saw in Endgame with how just terribly fragile Thor is, and I absolutely love Endgame Thor because that is a character arc that had been building for years.
That's
Of him to just finally fall
him-
apart.
Of
Yeah.
him, well, I think even more telling of him being worthy, like actually being worthy, not because a hammer says you're worthy, but because he says, I'm worthy, damn it, or darn it, yeah, sorry.
That's okay. And the comments to James are like, why could Hela hold the thing? And why? These are what I'm typing.
And I'm having to look up all sorts of stuff
Why
about how
could-
magic works and
and-
inscriptions.
The
and-
term worthy is such a
Yeah.
Vague term.
Well, and they said
Essentially,
that in her
what I
case,
ended up
it's
finding is
is
that
that-
she was more powerful than the inscription.
of the
Of
mass.
who
Okay,
was or
that's
wasn't
what we're
worthy.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even Odin.
At a certain
was more
point, you can just be
powerful.
strong
He
enough
was-
Odin made
to.
it.
Yeah, but he was technically, from what
Quote,
I've read,
unquote,
worthy.
yeah.
No, he would have been able to.
No, he wasn't
Because
worthy.
he made it,
He
not
made
because
it.
he was inherently worthy.
Not because he was
No.
inherently worthy.
So here's the thing. I will point out there are definitely characters who could wield the hammer that you wouldn't think. Like, I don't know. Actually, the hammer was destroyed by the time Thanos got involved. But I wonder if he, well, especially with
No,
the
you see
gauntlet.
that in Endgame. He cannot wield the hammer.
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
Because remember, there's a scene where, because technically speaking, Stormbreaker also holds that inscription.
Yeah.
Stormbreaker holds the same inscription
Yes,
that Mjolnir
it
does.
says, you take the little one.
Yeah.
Because he
So
said-
those two characters are the only two who can wield Stormbreaker as well as Mjolnir. When Thor goes at him with Stormbreaker, he knows about those weapons because undoubtedly he has had some kind of interaction with Odin in the past. And instead of going after the hammer, he actively grabs Thor's wrist
Mm.
because he cannot
Okay.
control the momentum of the hammer.
So
Though I mean more so with the gauntlet. If he had the full power of the stones,
Oh yeah,
he could
yeah.
overwrite any
yeah.
inscription.
Anybody could.
Um,
But what character do you think that could be worthy that we don't think would be worthy?
Scarlet Witch.
Oh,
Her
yeah.
her magic is way more powerful than anything
But not
Odin could do.
worthy.
Well, that's because her
That's power.
power isn't magic.
Well, okay, so now we're back to WandaVision.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about her. For one thing,
Yeah.
let's talk about Hayward real quick.
Okay.
Because Hayward
Oh,
sent
yeah.
It's an interesting
Monica there,
discussion.
and
Yeah.
a lot of people think that the big cameo and everything is going to be maybe Ultron, but Bettany said it's somebody he hasn't worked with before, which you assume that at some point he and James Spader
I was
crossed
gonna say I would
paths
love
and
to see
Ultron.
James Spader at any capacity.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So but Hayward did send Monica there. I've thought of that. So for some reason, he sent her there. So if he's Ultron, he had a reason for it. And then he has a definite reason for disliking powered people. He doesn't like Captain Marvel. He mentions that, and he doesn't like Wanda. You can tell he has almost a disgust for it. And hold on, real quick, let me tell you what I was thinking of is after the incident, they always call it the incident in like the,
This being Lagos or Sokovia?
no,
Blip, the
the
blip.
New York
Ah,
one.
the blip.
Okay.
Yes.
No, the New York incident.
Oh my gosh.
The battle
Okay.
of New
Yeah,
You're talking about the
yes.
Battle of New
Oh.
York. Okay.
In the, what we were just talking about, all the Netflix things. So,
Oh.
what I'm thinking of is in Jessica Jones, there's a point where, somebody basically tries to kill Jessica Jones because she's a person with abilities.
Mhm.
And because her parents died in the Battle of New York, and this person's mad about it. And it's like,
They can
is
say mutant now, right? But they haven't.
no,
No.
they can't
Yeah.
say
They have
mutant,
not.
but they
They
haven't.
can.
But they have
holding
not.
onto it. They're holding on to it. They're
They're
gonna say it.
very-
They're gonna cheer.
Oh
So-
my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna freak
But
out.
that's
Yeah,
the
it's
thing.
gonna be an
Does
assembly.
Is Hayward inherently bad? Or does Hayward just not like power people because something happened in Endgame or Blip or somewhere?
I think you actually put this most succinctly when you just asked, is Hayward Trask?
No. What? No. No.
You said that at
No.
first.
Did I?
Well,
Yes.
Oh my god, I'm so smart because that's a good one that nobody has said yet
Well, but here's the
from
thing.
X-Men.
Yeah. And I love this casting. But anyway.
Well,
Dinklage.
Yeah.
So that would be a great
Here's the
cameo.
thing. I've
But
seen a lot
he's
of.
worked with him. Sorry, he's
Oh,
worked.
no, you're good.
That can't be the cameo because he's worked
No.
with. He was in Endgame.
Well, but here's.
Yeah, we didn't work with him.
But you gotta think
No,
that people are in the
I
same.
don't-
Also, it wouldn't be Peter Dinklage again because that
No.
would have happened in like the 60s or 70s.
It also
Yeah, they
wouldn't
won't
have
be
been
the same.
Peter Dinklage because Marvel's been very good about not casting
Oh,
the same
have
people.
they?
Stop, because they really have been.
They haven't.
Like, here's the thing. So I've been seeing a lot of interviews with the characters and with the writers of the show, and they all seem to be saying the same thing about Hayward, where Hayward is not in himself a villain; he is a symbol for the world as a whole.
Okay.
So
Just a bureaucrat.
Yeah, the world as a whole right now is not a fan of powered people.
Okay.
because of the blip, the snap, because of that whole incident, a lot of people, especially those who survived the snap, are very anti-powered people.
And he says that. He
Yeah.
says that. You weren't here.
Yeah, and it goes into that.
Yeah.
You still see the Avengers as heroes because you disappeared for the time that they failed. And it's
But everyone was
That's
there
understandable.
for the time that they succeeded and brought everything back.
Right.
And,
So the people
and
who-
that's
so
not
right back.
common knowledge.
that's the best. By the way, episode 4, when I saw
That
that
opening.
first 2 seconds, I was like amazed and just thought it made me think.
I didn't
what
quite
in
know
the
what
world-
was happening at
You
first
didn't know
when
for
she was
five
Remind me
re-
which
seconds.
one's for?
The ones where Monica comes back.
where she
Yes.
recombobulates.
And so somebody put that whole thing with that, with the Hulk doing the snap, and put them together as a video. And to watch those two together is amazing. 'Cause
Yeah.
you think about, you were
You
like,
could probably.
we knew about what happened with people when they blipped and they left.
I need to see
But
if
we
someone.
don't think about when they came back, how
Yeah.
it would be. I mean, you're just sitting here and all of a sudden somebody's here.
Again,
Yeah.
if anyone was in a plane at that time,
They've
Bad
already
news.
answered that.
what?
Those people that were in planes and stuff, the nature of Banner's snap was that they
Return
would
them
all
safely.
come back safely.
Oh, okay. That
So
makes
any
sense.
incident in like, oh, somebody was falling into a wood chipper just as they got blipped, yeah, he would come back standing on the ground in a safe area,
Okay.
because that was the nature of Banner's blip
Okay.
or snap.
And then speaking of Monica, we get the whole thing in the last episode where she does the superhero.
Landing.
I have
Yeah.
so many thoughts on Monica. I love her.
I love her
so
too.
much.
And you know, somebody spoke about the fact that we had one scene there with 3 really, really super powerful women.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, which is so cool. And obviously, I had done some research, so I had an idea that Agnes was Agatha. But at that moment where she's pulling her away and Monica is like almost ready to go, and I'm just like, it could have been something.
Oh,
I don't think Monica knows yet what power
Oh,
she
no,
necessarily
she doesn't.
had. She's not sure yet, but
she hasn't even begun to, and so we talked about how they haven't said mutant yet. I'm very excited for when they introduce mutants. I don't think it'll be in this show.
because you don't think the cameo will be Magneto coming to get his daughter?
No,
Okay.
No.
unlikely. Well,
At least not
unlikely
yet.
on a few different levels. Mostly because it is in the MCU as it currently stands. Magneto is not the father of Scarlet Witch.
Right.
It's
Uh,
Whizzer.
No.
Yes, it is. We
Oh.
know that it's
Yeah.
Whizzer because there's
It
a
is.
statue of him in like episode 1 or 2.
Yeah.
No.
It's yeah. So the I'm a little bit nervous that they're gonna throw the word mutant in for what Monica has become. Even
She's
though
a
that's not-
mutate.
She is a
I've
mutate.
asked him that. I'm like, what's the
Um,
difference between a mutant and the person who gets abilities later?
Yes.
Through
Right,
experimentation.
Mutant is
and-
born
This
with it,
version,
mutate.
She's a mutate, but
Yes.
but comic book she is a mutant.
Though
No.
to be fair,
No?
she
No, Monica Rambeau is not a mutant.
No,
No,
sorry,
no.
sorry.
Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Scarlet Witch,
Is
though
that-
And that's
she
even
raised a really
kinda
good point
questionable.
about
Okay.
whether because in the MCU, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver got their powers from Strucker's experimentation.
Right.
into the Mind Stone.
But it is entirely possible that they were mutants and it just happened that their mutant ability
Because I've
happened
watched,
at that point.
well, because I've watched that's Age of Ultron, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So many times lately. The one thing that they point out is that everybody else they experimented on died. Those were the
Yeah.
only
Yes.
2 people
Right.
who lived. Is that why they were the only 2 people who lived? Because actually they are mutants.
The only
Here we go.
issue
You pull that out.
The only issue I would have with that is, especially if you're looking at the comics side of it, so Scarlet Witch's powers, both in the comics and in the MCU, are wildly defined. So sometimes it's called magic, and then other times it is called not magic. What she can do, and this has become very clear if you look at the way that her abilities present themselves. is very similar to the Reality Stone as we see it in Dark World.
Make and unmake reality.
Yes, so her powers, that's why I hesitate, even if we're talking about comics version Wanda, to call her a mutant, because her powers are beyond that. Her, like her powers go beyond whether or not she is a mutant, because she can decide whether or not she's a mutant. If she says, I'm a mutant, she's a mutant. If she says, no more mutants,
Like she doesn't
90% of the
count.
population of mutants disappears. So her powers are very weird, and I love them. It is very difficult to classify them in any way.
And
I think
that
magic
brings-
is just the easiest.
Magic is
But
the
it is-
catch-all it falls
We've
under.
talked about it forever.
Well,
We've talked about why she's actually probably the strongest. Like,
Oh, hands down.
Avenger,
Yeah.
is because
Currently,
she,
she
can
is
do
the
whatever
strongest
she
Avenger.
wants.
So we were
She
doing a
can-
lot of
but-
discussion about power levels
Right.
because I
It's
can't
over
remember exactly
9,000?
what you were talking about. Yeah.
I've asked
what
a lot.
9,000? But
A lot about her.
but specifically you asked about like who's is X the most powerful, is Y the most powerful, and I'm like, of everyone we've seen, like
It's Scarlet Witch.
Scarlet Witch, but then like other than that, like Dormammu is probably the most
Oh, yeah,
we
powerful
talked about
entity
that.
we've seen because he's a
Yeah.
literal like ancient god. He's
Well,
basically like
he's
an
a
old
universe.
one.
He's
Yeah.
a universe.
Yeah.
He is one of the multiverses.
But
Mm,
in the
just-
Avengers and people we
I don't feel
kind of-
confident that. I mean, maybe other than we don't see where everything's going yet in Wanda.
No.
So I can't speak
Mm.
for that.
I
power
definitely
level. We don't.
can't.
What was the jingle? What was the song in the end of last?
It was Agatha.
All along. It was Agatha all along. How much of it is Agatha all along, right? So like,
Yeah.
so
That's
we don't.
what-
That's what
Oh,
he's
we've
saying.
been getting- her and I have been getting
That's
into this
very
at home
interesting.
as to so one of the theories that I have about this show is that we are not watching Scarlet Witch be a hero. We are watching the absolute opposite of that. We are watching Scarlet Witch
Be a
become a villain.
Yeah.
Become
Sure.
and
And don't make me sad.
no, and it is sad because if you look at every episode and how it is structured, especially around her, it is constantly her falling into grief, being overcome by it, acting reactively, all of these things we've seen in villains. And it's very perfectly summed up in the moment in episode 7 when Monica confronts her. Don't let them make you out to be the villain.
Maybe I already
Maybe
am.
I already am. So the question comes down to, was it Agatha all along, or is Wanda's reality manipulating powers creating another bad guy so she doesn't have to be?
Scapegoat, more or less.
Scapegoat.
Yeah,
That's
like...
the ultimate Mephisto that everybody's talking about.
Oh, yeah, and I would love to see Mephisto come in and be Mephisto.
But did
Ooh,
she?
wait, so what you're saying is that Agatha Harkness may not actually exist.
No, I
she
think
is a construct of Scarlet Witch creating her own villain.
No, I think she exists. I think the person Agatha Harkness exists. Whether or not she had powers before Wanda interacted with her, I'm not positive of.
Okay, so there's a tiny thing. You noticed it first, and it's that when they're going through and going like, yeah, this guy's name is this guy's name is this, they're figuring out all the citizens who are in there. Agnes does not have an ID attached to her.
No
E
She's the
driver's license.
only person who doesn't have a driver's license.
Well, that can be explained in other ways. Like Sword is not Shield. Sword is absolutely
think it's
functioning the best of their.
But
No,
yeah,
it
they
could
have.
be.
They definitely.
Because they do things like
But
that.
I guess
Oh,
there
of
could
course
be
they
two.
do. They
There could be
throw-
two real ways.
They throw things like fours in to throw people off.
If
Like-
she's totally in control of the entire situation, obviously she wouldn't have a reason to not have her ID with her. Well, actually, wait, because that's not their actual IDs. That's
No,
just a
it's
thing.
just
So
information
she
you can
either
find out.
is not an American citizen for
Which is
whatever
possible.
reason, or she like she exists completely outside of such a system, or she could be completely made up.
Well, you kind of said the key word there, control, is so. I personally believe that Wanda is subconsciously in control of everything that occurs inside of the hex.
Absolutely.
I believe that she is, and that's, and you know, and
But that's
again,
just
we've
me.
had
That's
this
my
conversation.
heart. That's
No,
my
and
heart
absolutely.
coping. It's not because she's my favorite.
But I think it's
Which-
subconscious.
It's so much grief.
And Emily has made wonderful points on this as well, where she also doesn't really believe. Do you want to explain your?
I want to know where you're going. Like, I've made lots of points.
I know, but
They're all wonderful.
well, the point
That's
the
what
point
I'm
that she
saying.
made is that she believes it's more somebody else manipulating Wanda emotionally.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
with the way that I have more suspicions of Pietro than anybody else
Yeah.
personally. I feel like the twist of bringing in Evan Peters is wild. I loved that
Mhm.
so
That
so
twist
much.
is amazing.
Literal
Um,
screaming.
Fantastic.
And to me, it doesn't make it leans more towards there being somebody outside or using like just trying to get in there any way they can, you know what I mean? Like to manipulate her. And I know
Kind of what better way to get to Wanda than through her brother?
Right.
Yeah, more or less. And but they
They're-
can't.
And see,
The reason to switch is because we can't just go dig up a decomposed body. So
you're right.
like we're jumping universes to bring in a different Quicksilver and or
okay.
because I don't feel like you could give if they hadn't given him the powers it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
His placement and being Quicksilver already like
Yeah, they're
it's
really gonna have to explain that one.
Well, and for me,
because
Oh, sorry,
if
I'll
they
let you
weren't
finish.
going to make it significant that he was from another universe, they wouldn't have picked Evan Peters. I feel like
Yeah.
and that and from
like,
my
that's gotta
perspective
it's-
on that
be
specific
something.
thing is more. I agree that the choice in casting Evan Peters was intentional. So I
Totally.
do kind of believe that Evan Peters, Quicksilver, is a Quicksilver from another universe in the multiverse. My thing is I don't necessarily believe that it was an outside force that brought Pietro in. It was Wanda herself subconsciously needing an ally because Vision at that point was turning on her. And Vision was saying, hey, what you're doing here is wrong. And Wanda needed somebody to be on her
And that
side.
whole thing.
and
But he
be-
recognizes that he's supposed to be dead.
Yes.
So he's not just
No.
living Quicksilver from the X-Men movies.
No,
You know,
he is Pietro.
Yeah.
yeah. But the thing is, I think my theory, or like kind of what I feel is going on, is that he's essentially been body snatched as a like confusion technique. Like if not to say it's Mephisto or Nightmare or whoever it's going to be, I'm thinking it's somebody using his form because it's the closest thing they could get to her brother, and that's what they were trying to go for.
Yeah.
Because in the Halloween special episode where he is like a little naughty boy.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a little bit evil,
He's
and
a little bit
that-
naughty,
which
and he
is-
says
and-
naughty things to her too.
Yeah,
which is
and-
reminiscent
and-
of Quicksilver in the comics, though.
Yes.
But
I just feel that to me leads to him not being fully in control, which I guess there are now pointing at Agatha for that. Agatha's controlling him in some people's theories, which is also
Well,
possible.
they
my
did
theory-
show during the Agatha All Along that
That
she was
she-
manipulating him in some fashion.
Right.
But real quick, my theory is that, and I told you this, that they took Vision, Sword took Vision and was working on him to be some sort of a weapon.
Oh,
yes,
yeah. Oh,
So
yeah,
she
for sure.
that's
grabbed
very
him,
clear.
So she grabbed him to save him and put him in this hex. And then there's certain people that are, want to do different, different things with that. That's why I think she grabbed him. I think we didn't see that whole video.
I
Like
hear what you're saying.
what Hayward said is she comes in there, they show a video of her stomping in there, grabbing him.
Yeah.
But there's a reason he's all apart, and there's a reason they're working on him, which nobody talked about.
Oh no, you're
And so-
absolutely right.
I think that
In that
Sword is somewhat bad in this
Oh
too.
yeah, Sword's bad. in
So,
every version
so
of it.
if she did that to save him, but there's more, like you said, there's some manipulation going on. If
It's
it's Mephisto,
unclear
if it's
how
not
many
weird.
parties are involved.
Exactly. We
Yes.
don't
Well,
know.
yeah,
and
so-
we've got 2 episodes to find out.
Yeah.
We're gonna
3,
th-
8, 9, and 10.
And there,
Oh, there's
no,
a 10?
No,
I
there's
thought there were 10 episodes.
10. No, 9 is it's done March 5th, and then March 12th they're having a making of.
Oh,
So we've got 2
So,
episodes.
real quick, before you get too far away from Quicksilver, is it
Yes.
possible that it's like some sort of like if you bring someone into a reality where they already existed or they died previously, like maybe there's some weird
oh,
melding sort
very
of thing?
No.
very possible. There's precedent for that.
He was
in
asking
comics
her
as
a
well.
lot of questions
Well,
though,
and
that I found
well-
odd, didn't you?
Well, here's the thing, and oh, sorry, were
No,
you saying
go
So
ahead.
she was green.
So here's the thing that I want to talk about, specifically the Vision thing. I think you're absolutely right. They were trying to make Vision into a weapon. I kind of think they were inadvertently going to reawaken the Ultron side of Vision. That's my personal theory, but that's a different thing.
That-
I
okay, so
think
hold up. This is where I went a little while ago. It would have been really hype if they did that in this past episode, and Ultron could have made an appearance resembling Robert California. That would have been wow. Wow.
Oh, well-
like,
well, we'll
like
see.
An Office spin-off, and that would have been so good. That would have been so good. I mean,
But I want to, as much as anybody, believe that Wanda is the good guy here. But it is becoming very obvious that she is consciously aware that she is causing a massive amount of pain to the people in the Hex and is increasingly unwilling to let them go.
She is, but she also keeps saying things like, "I didn't do that. I don't know what's happening."
I think
Is
she
that
doesn't.
because
I
she
think, like you
loses
said,
her
it's
memory?
subconscious.
It's a subconscious control, but it's her
It's becoming
conscious
more
mi-
conscious.
Yeah, and her conscious
And she's
mind
okay with
seems to be very unwilling
Yeah.
to let them go. Because when Vision starts to bring it to her attention, where are the kids? Why did my coworker scream, "Help me"? Why is Agatha crying in her car? When Vision brought that to her attention, she went, "I don't know why you're asking these questions. Just leave it alone."
And she said, and he said, "You can't control me like the others." And she said, basically, "I don't know
Wanna
exactly
bet?
what you
Yeah,
want."
can I-
And then the
oh, can't
credits
I?
started to roll,
Uh-huh.
and he still overcame it to be
But the
able-
kids were there.
No,
They
no,
just
no, no.
weren't present in the narrative.
Yeah.
Quicksilver points out, like,
But then we saw what happens to
Reduce the
people that
pain.
aren't present in the narrative when he starts to go to the outskirts of the town in the Halloween
they're just
episode,
frozen.
and
Yeah.
and you've got the lady
'Cause she
hanging
can't-
the
They've got-
Halloween, and she's crying.
they got low
The- and, like,
resources.
we don't think she can control it out there.
They're
Yeah,
the
she's
they're
incredibly
the
powerful,
um
but even
Low render.
yeah low lot. They're Super Mario 64 that far away from the camera
Yeah.
where he's
Yeah.
a blocky little mess.
16-bit, 8-bit, 4-bit, 1-bit.
Yeah.
And another one of my favorite things that has come out of this is Jimmy Woo. And,
Oh, Jimmy Woo.
Yes.
He's excellent. He's so good. And
Agent-
I watched Ant-Man and Wasp
Agent
again, and
Woo.
I'm in love with that movie. I love it even more now.
I almost
Um,
cried at the beginning of WandaVision when he does the
Card
the
trick,
card trick. I was
Yeah.
like,
which is so good, and he's so kind. He's such a great character because
Oh,
every
he
time
is.
Darcy does something, he's like, "Great job, Dr. Lewis," or
And that
and
team
he's
up.
So yeah, give us a that three.
Yeah.
Give us Woo, Darcy, and,
And
Monica.
as
Yeah.
In a show, and I'm watching that
And
all day long.
You very
And
well might get that because
somebody's
Agent Wu, he has his own comics run. It's Agent Wu and the Agents of
Atlas.
Agents of Atlas,
Yeah,
um,
I looked it up.
where he does have his little group.
Yep.
But you can ask Emily when we were watching episode 3. Episode 3 is when
Four.
they all 4. Episode 4, and they show Darcy, and she introduces herself, and she's like, "Doctor, I'm astrophysics," and I like, oh my god, my little girl has grown up because seeing her in the first Thor movie where she's like, "I'm doing this for an elective. Like,
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't care about any of this.
Right.
I just need this one credit to finish my actual degree of whatever it was, like musical theater or something." And to see her take such a 90-degree turn into Yeah, I'm a doctor of astrophysics.
And it makes
It's
sense
so
because
amazing
during
to
the
me.
course
She's
of
seen
the
some
Thor
stuff.
movies, not only did she
She's
see
seen some
stuff,
stuff,
but she also met Skarsgård. I can't remember his name.
Aaron.
Aaron.
Aaron
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. and-
So
yeah.
you know, like
Who, by the way, somebody pointed out, explained the nexus when he was in the insane asylum. One of the things he was doing when he had Stanley's
talking about
shoe
the Nexus.
is he
The nexus.
explained the nexus during that time.
Well,
during,
and that's one of the things
is
that Scarlet Witch is.
Dark-
Like,
Dark Horror. You know the Nexus commercial they had in the.
that's in Dark World, yeah.
That's in Dark World.
Yeah.
He
Mhm.
explains it.
Yeah.
But real quick,
The
who
nexus
does
of all
anybody think
realities.
we got? Because remember, Jimmy hasn't been in there yet. Jimmy hasn't been in there yet. Who's his witness? Who was in witness protection? He went there in the first place because somebody's in witness
Wait.
protection.
Well, and see,
Wait,
that
wait,
could be
wait.
Agnes.
But does this? I forget. This show takes place before Spider-Man: Far From Home.
No, concurrently. Far from Home, I think, takes place concurrently.
right after. Like this is
Oh,
like
it might
9
be.
days after the blip, and that was like 2 months after the everybody.
No, this isn't.
No,
right
I was gonna
after
say
the blip.
because we see
Not the blip. After everybody came back.
Oh,
we
so
see
yeah, no.
everybody
blip.
coming back, but that's in past.
Yeah, they say it
It's
says
'cause
5
of-
months later.
because of
Sorry, we're saying
Monica.
this show where we're currently
It's like
at
about
is,
9
is,
days after, or 3 weeks after.
5 months after the end of Endgame.
5
That's
months?
pretty-
I
That's
thought
what I
they said
thought. Yeah,
3
I did-
weeks
that's
after
what I
she
thought.
came back.
thought it said 5
She
months.
she went to Hayward and met with him, and he said, "It's been 3 weeks. You're the first
Oh.
one to come back."
Yeah, no. That's
Okay,
not
but
true.
then he sends her
There's
on a
multiple-
thing.
There's multiple.
Yeah, but the thing
I-
that she. Oh, sorry.
I thought there was multiple months in between
Yeah, I
before
thought
she
so
gets
too.
sent to the hex.
No, I thought he
So-
sent her to the hex that very day. She shows
I don't-
up there.
I don't think so because he acts very differently
Maybe,
versus
By that time.
Yeah.
maybe.
Well,
But
Well,
Well-
but then we have to think about the fact that
Why do
she
you
gets
think it's that
okay.
guy?
So she gets sent to like the hex.
from what I
think
understand, this is first, and then is it Far From Home? Is
yeah.
technically a little bit after.
okay if they happen to be in the other direction. I think that the witness protection thingy person. My first thought was Peter Parker. He has to go into hiding now,
yeah, no,
as
but
of the
I
end of
wouldn't-
Far From Home.
That would be too. We would have already seen him. Like that's
Yeah,
not something you
it's-
throw.
we don't
That's
hide
not something you
that.
throw in at the end
You don't
where
hide
Peter
that.
Parker's in Westview somewhere.
I think you're confusing weeks with months on the timeline.
Did I confuse weeks with months?
Okay.
But
Because this is saying WandaVision takes place in 2023, about 3 to 4 weeks after the finale of Endgame.
okay, so yeah,
Okay.
so
It was
you're
real quick.
right.
It was,
Yeah, you're
Okay.
right.
and then
This
that's about
takes place
2 months
before
after.
Far
So
From
yeah,
Home.
not
But
them.
but the person I would love for it to be is it Luis or Lewis that talks really fast and touches the story all the time?
I call
And-
him Pastor
Oh.
Rob. He
Would-
looks like my pastor from New Jersey. It's
Oh,
like,
that-
they're the same guy.
Isn't that right? But wouldn't that be great? Because
Well-
he could tell you the whole story of what happened in Westview.
Well,
Really
yeah,
quickly.
but I think this didn't until you mentioned that Wu had a witness WITSEC person in there. I think this kind of ties back to Agatha didn't have a driver's license because she was
Witness.
And witness.
Oh,
she's a new person.
that could be. That could be.
And so that's highly possible. But then you get into the why didn't Wu immediately recognize her?
True.
Because
so
we've
there's-
seen her on
there's
TV,
multiple-
so it's somebody we haven't seen on. It's somebody
So
who
again-
hasn't seen on TV.
So-
well, it depends on
I
how far Wanda
don't even
has
know you- I
worked
think
in
I
this
must have
reality.
missed
So
whatever
we'll see.
reference that somebody's in witness protection.
So,
what is-
The
The-
reason Wu was
that what
there
we
in the
were-
first
Yeah,
That's
the
why
whole
Wu
reason
showed
he was
up in the
there.
first place.
Yeah.
okay.
Because
And then-
Monica gets there.
and it's like, what's going on?
What's
And he
going
said,
on?
I
Remember
was
they
here.
talked to the cops, and the cops are
They
standing
first-
there.
okay.
Yeah.
And he goes,
said-
I have a witness in here.
And she's like, "What?
So-
Oh, you lost him. What? Nobody knows that he.
Wow,
nobody says
that's a
he
whole
exists."
detail that I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
None
they
of his.
say
Well, and that's.
it's not that he's not. Nobody's saying they know where he is or anything. That nobody thinks he exists.
And that's.
Just like the people who
And
the cops there don't think that place exists, even though they're sitting right there. I love.
And-
By the way, that subtle acting, just real quick, the subtle acting with Monica,
Mhm.
going like, so Westview, New Jersey, and she looks right at the sign, and just, it's so subtle, but so good, doesn't exist, and they're like, no ma'am.
Which furthers the how strong is Wanda, because she has made an entire town disappear from all knowledge. And
Right.
Except for.
But-
Selectively.
well,
Selectively.
no, because the
Wu
people,
and Monica both knew about Westview.
And so does Sword.
yeah, I guess.
So why do some people know? That
So
would be.
she-
I think
I
comes
think
down
it's a
to-
proximity thing.
Yeah,
I think the hex went down and locked out a certain portion, and then out from that sort of exuded this like
Yeah.
And if
memory
you
white
arrive
field.
there, if you
except
arrive
for
there,
except for the people that are inside of it, because Wu specifically says that the people who are inside of the hex, their family, if they live outside of the hex, do not believe they exist.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Is they've been
And
knowledge of the people and the town has been erased from people who live in
Who
a
knew of it? To begin with.
surrounding area.
in the surrounding area, and who knew of people in there.
It's kind of like
Yes.
a forget me not scenario. That's an X-Men character, but the gist of it is, I'm looking at Westview. If I look away from Westview, Westview doesn't exist anymore.
It's like the opposite of the Pirates of the Caribbean island, where you can only find it if you already know where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only if you
That
didn't
was such a
know.
deep pull, and I love it so much. Like it took me a second to catch up where you were going.
But if you didn't know where it was, then now you can see it.
Yeah.
So the only other person that I could think of that would have had, because most of these supers have a pretty open like, yeah, I'm Tony Stark. You know, I'm Iron
Yeah,
Man. I'm
right.
Tony Stark. Everyone knows Steve Rogers, Captain America. That's why I'm thinking whoever the witness is has to have something to do with Spider-Man, because he's the only one where if someone knew he was Spider-Man, they would for some reason need to
It
be.
happened later.
Or
so
some
I
of
don't
our
think-
Netflix homes that haven't gotten any.
Well, but
Maybe
here's
it
the
didn't
thing,
happen later.
And
If
this is the hard. Oh, sorry.
it's Vulture,
It could be. No, Vulture's in prison.
is he?
Yes,
Okay.
Vulture's in prison.
Okay, that's fair.
He's
Well-
getting out for the next movie.
And to go to your
Netflix.
That was a
point
fake
here
ad.
of the Netflix
It
people,
doesn't matter.
as
It's
much as
happening.
this breaks my heart for characters like Luke Cage, Marvel has been very quick to get rid of all of their old TV stuff. For instance, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that show is no longer canon.
1 to 4.
Oh, good.
Season 1 to 4.
Season 1 to 4 is canon. Everything else after that is no longer
Okay,
canon.
that's as much as I
And
watch.
the
That's
Netflix
perfect.
shows
I'm so-
the Netflix shows are no longer canon.
That's why the
Okay.
astrophysicist, everybody wants it to be Fitz. I want it to be Fitz desperately.
I
So that's the next
Yeah.
question. Who's the astrophysicist?
Yeah.
What
Do you guys have a theory?
astrophysicist?
Monica says, I
Keep
know an
saying that. She
astrophysicist.
keeps
I
saying
know a
I
guy.
That's why
So-
that last episode was weird, but it did prove, because we were waiting for the astrophysicist. We were
Well,
waiting for the astrophysicist.
yeah, but we
I'm
don't-
even waiting. I don't even know who the any of
One,
these
I think it's
people
going to be Reed Richards.
I think it's going to be
that's
Reed
the only
Richards
one
as
that
well.
makes sense. But
I don't even know who
think
that
it's-
is, and I'm waiting for it.
Mr. Fantastic,
I
Stretchy
don't,
Man,
I don't know any of these things
He's like
because
the
again,
origin,
I
like,
just
he's like-
I'm
the Stretch
all-
Boy. Also, horrible person.
I'm
Also
all-
another horrible person.
I'm
Reed
also
Reed
all
Richards is
my
terrible.
friends all the
Yes.
time,
Are
Yeah.
always.
and I just started
He
watching.
put his
X-Men.
son in a coma.
Are we going to talk about Hank Pym
Was it
beating
for
his wife?
his-
Like, come on.
Was
we,
it
we know.
for...
Yeah, Hank
His
Pym's also a
protection?
terrible person.
They're all bad. We get it. This is the MCU now. and they're nice.
Yeah. Yes,
Well-
and that was the thing. So I did watch X-Men movie, by the way. I did rewatch one of the X-Men movies I had seen,
Which one?
the one that has Trask, and
Oh, Days of Future Past.
And
That's
I've
my
not seen-
absolute favorite one. Then,
And the only
Which
thing
is
I like
funny
in it-
because it's the most confusing of all of
and the
them.
only thing
I
I
loved
like
it.
in it
Oh, it's
still,
great, but it's confusing.
the only thing I like in it still is this, ironically, the scene with Evan Peters thing.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the guy that got to play Nixon, because he does a phenomenal
Does a phenomenal
job.
job, and you know how I feel about
Here's-
James McAvoy and
That was
his
a
stuff.
random. I
But
wouldn't have
those
thought
X
that at all, but that yes.
X1 and X2, and I'm just like, and they also they have done things in those movies that I don't think they did in the, or they did in the Avengers movie that they did. There's so many people and so many things are happening, and I'm like, why is Jean Grey old in this movie, and in this movie she's like a teenager?
Well,
I am
that's-
so freaking confused, you know.
That's
so
because Dark Phoenix is a bad saga and try to tell in a
Yeah.
movie. That's
So-
why
so
all of
anyway,
those
but
movies
I
failed.
did watch X-Men, but I'm super excited to get the astrophysicist, even though I have no idea who Reed Richards is.
Oh, yeah.
But they did point out one thing that we did learn is that there are people in Sword that are loyal to Monica, not to Hayward. We did find that out from
Well, yeah, and we're gonna.
that scene.
Well, we're gonna
So
get
hopefully
into.
we still get the astrophysicist though.
Well, we're gonna get into. So. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, have you seen the theory that those people that Monica met with were not human necessarily, but could be Skrull?
Oh my God!
Skrull,
Everybody's
which is-
like Skrull.
Well,
That was another thing.
ooh.
Everybody
Because
was a Skrull.
Well, because it does link. It makes more sense for Monica,
Monica.
specifically because
Yes.
of her
If
history.
her astrophysicist was a scroll,
Yes.
someone or another, that would make a lot more sense.
Oh, it's possible. I've heard a lot of theories that the specific person, Goodman or whatever her name is, the specific person she immediately talks to,
Is a Skrull.
is not only a Skrull, but is the little girl Skrull, the daughter of Talos, that
Ah,
appears in
gotcha.
Captain Marvel.
Gotcha.
You know, that would be a pretty good way to
But-
get people out of the hex.
What do you mean?
Send Scroll in to.
The nature, but I think the nature of the hex would automatically overwrite that plan, because the nature of the hex is that anybody who steps into that without either powers to counter,
Because Monica got powers.
Monica got powers, and that's
But
how
she
she's
didn't
able
get
to
powers
cancel.
till later.
No,
she got
when she
powers
goes
when
in
she
on her
went
own.
in there. When she went in there.
But I'm talking about the first time Monica went in there, she was
She didn't
completely
need-
under her own control.
No,
She
she was
wasn't.
not. She was
She
immediately
herself as
overridden.
Geraldine.
She was
didn't know-
immediately overridden.
Yes, but she said, Geraldine. She was making it up the whole time.
No, she was
didn't
immediately
know-
overwritten.
She didn't know who she was.
She didn't know who she
Wait,
was
wait,
until
wait.
the moment that Wanda gave birth, and then small snippets began to creep
Yeah.
in.
I disagree with that.
No,
I think
she
Monica
didn't.
knew.
No, she
No,
did not
because
know who she was.
it's
She said
clear.
she didn't
It
know.
says. She
Yes.
says it. She doesn't
She
know.
said
She
she
didn't
didn't
It
know.
felt like she was glitching, not that she was
Yeah.
making
Okay.
it up. It
Yeah,
felt like-
she glitched for a
like
second
she-
because Wanda didn't know what to do with this
Yeah,
new
she was
person
fresh.
that wasn't there when she made
Yeah.
this reality.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
Um,
in speaking of when she says that, there's Emma Caulfield who's in Buffy. Anya is in that.
Wait.
Anya's playing Dottie.
Is
who's
Anya
the-
in season 4?
Has Anya come yet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
She's in.
Sorry,
she,
I
when
saw
Anya comes.
background story.
He's
I
been
don't
watching
have been
Just
watching
started-
Buffy for the
just
first
started
time.
No, I know, but I'm trying to picture who you're talking about.
I know. And this is the whole thing.
Have you watched Buffy?
Very little.
Okay,
wanna-
I
okay.
adore
Never
Buffy,
mind.
and I looked at the cast list, and I was like, oh sorry, and I was like, Emma Caulfield is Dottie, and I'm going, and other people, I posted on Facebook, I said, oh my god.
Which one was Dottie?
Dottie was
The-
the,
the
rose
haughty,
lady, the really
like,
uptight lady.
Runs the
The
Tea Party
blonde.
thing.
Oh,
The one-
got it. Okay,
with the
okay,
radio.
okay.
But remember, there's a thing with Dottie too, because she says, I've heard about you and your husband, and she says, we mean you no harm, or something like that, and she looks at her and goes,
I don't
believe
believe you."
you.
Yeah, because they're all being hurt.
But she had something to say that. There was some ability of her to say that at that particular time.
I think-
So there's something there where why
But you-
did she have that ability to say that?
Well, you got to look at it. Like, yes, what you're talking about, I get where you're going with that, but you got to look at it a little bit wider, because I think what you're seeing those are the moments when Wanda's powers are glitching, because somebody, like when that instance happens is when Wu is talking through the radio, and Wanda is so, what is that? Who is talking through the radio, that her powers are turned off for a second because she's focused on something else.
Maybe.
And her powers are turned off, and then these people get a moment of freedom, and they try to say, hey.
Okay, and that's why the blood was red, because it wasn't part of her plan. Anything
Yes.
that hasn't been part of her plan
Immediately
in those
breaks the
ones
reality.
And is that why
come out in color.
In the first two episodes.
No, Anya. Sorry, I just looked
Well,
it up.
Yeah.
Anya's a great character.
And
Yeah.
in the
And-
first
Sorry.
in the first two
She's
episodes,
Donnie
yeah,
in
they
the
do come in
second
color,
episode.
and that breaks
See,
her
okay, she
reality.
doesn't-
So what does she do in episode 3? She makes it color.
Yeah, just so
Yeah,
the
how
breaks
about-
in reality are less.
How about this one?
substantial.
Is it Herb next door? Or Herb, the guy next door?
Her, yeah.
And she's having her babies and having that conversation with, and he's sawing through the cement.
Because she's focused on
because she's
something
focused
else.
on something else.
Except the Agatha all along part shows us that she was wibbly wobbling him.
But
She was
is
wibbly
that
wobbly not to talk.
because she was actually the responsible for it all along, or is that because Wanda needs a bad guy?
Yeah.
Or is it because
And she's rewriting past events
I don't know.
to make Agatha the bad guy.
I still want
mean,
Agatha to be.
and the wonderful nature about WandaVision and how it's being done, and I love that they're doing this in television format rather than movie format, is that we're not going to get the answers. The end of this is not going to be
No.
a massive, oh yeah, here's the answer to this. Was Agatha
Because we
really?
got
You
Doctor
don't know.
Strange coming up, and she's in it.
And that's where
And
I kind
probably
of
a
get.
villain.
See, and that's where I kind of get my
Mm.
my theory that this is
2
not a
years.
hero redemption story. This is a villain origin story.
Start of darkness.
Because think about it this way. If Wanda were to go villain, be it from manipulation or grief or whatever, who is the only current Avenger that stands any kind of chance
Doctor
against
Doctor
her?
Strange. Yeah.
but let me ask you, we'll do 2 things and then we'll finish up.
Mhm.
For that one is the guy that we were just saying, I can't say his name ever, who played the
Billy the son. She can't say that name.
no
What?
the guy who was in Doctor Strange,
It's Bobby.
who was Doctor Strange.
Mordo.
Oh, it is Billy.
Mordo.
I'm wrong.
Okay,
Mordo?
I have 2 cousins named Billy and Bobby, and I easily could have made that mistake. Like, wow.
No, he was. But what's his name? in real
Mordo.
life?
Baron Moto.
Chi-
Mordo.
Edgiafar.
yeah.
Chietwe Edgiafar or something
Yes.
like that?
Yes. So
I'm butchering his name.
Right,
Yes,
Me,
but
that-
anyway,
that-
and I can't say it
If that's your
either.
name.
But
It's
he's
Bobby.
he's
I'm gonna look it up real
he's
quick.
more
just so that
he's
I'm not
Mordor.
butchering this
Is
man's
that
name.
Mordo?
Yes,
Mordo?
Baron Mordo.
Okay,
Yes.
so at the end of Doctor Strange, he says there's too much magic. Sorry, there's too much magic, and he needs to get rid of wizards, witches,
Yes.
and he goes and kills Benjamin Bratt's character. And so everybody's assuming that the next Multiverse of Madness is he's the bad guy looking to kill witches and kill wizards. And,
She would tell Edgiafor.
and what do you think that he just is that end scene was just a thing, or do you think we see him in Doctor Strange with Wanda as both the villain, or do you think we see Nightmare or Mephisto in Doctor Strange?
Well, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't think it's going to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think it
I
I
don't
think,
think one means the other necessarily.
yes. And here's the thing: if they're gonna introduce Mephisto, he's not gonna be a singular movie villain. He's not gonna be a Whiplash
It'll be an
or
arc.
Justin Hammer. He's going to be the next Thanos. He is such a massive character to undertake that. And I've said this to her. To find out later that Mephisto had a hand in what is happening in Westview would not shock me at all, but I super hope they do not introduce him in this show because he is such a massive, all-consuming character.
Would you be okay with that being
should
like
be
the,
introduced in an Avengers
like how
movie.
well
How he
okay,
gets
so like remember how
introduced
they
to
did,
Doctor Strange?
I don't remember what movie it was. Gosh, all the
Avengers.
after credits things at this point. First Avengers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that-
the
that
first
was
Avengers
just
movie
like-
is where they introduced Thanos
Yes,
as a
yeah.
reality in the
Okay.
universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would like to see something similar for...
And
so
we
you
may
would
get that,
wouldn't
like
like
an
it if
end
we
scene.
got just that small
Yeah.
a hint from this.
No, I think so. Like I'm fine with them hinting at it and playing with it. But what I'm seeing a lot of people do is going, "Oh, Piotr's Mephisto,"
Oh my
or
God.
not Piotr. Piotr is Colossus. I
Yep.
really got to get this.
Pietro.
Pietro.
Yep.
Pietro
Really?
is Mephisto. The cat is Mephisto.
Oh my God.
The
I
rabbit
mean,
is Mephisto.
At this point,
I'm
I'm
like-
Mephisto.
I'm enjoying
Yeah.
the memes.
No, and the
The
memes
memes
are
are
fantastic.
The
hilarious.
wacky arm
I mean,
inflatable
great.
flailing tube man that looked like Dormammu was Mephisto.
Yeah, and I think it would be a disservice to that character and to the possibilities he can bring to the wider Avengers mythos to introduce him in such a small way. I'm
Right.
fine with them hinting at it. In fact, I want them to hint at it because I do want Mephisto to be the next big bad.
I think what he's saying would be great is if the end of this is basically the equivalent of Thanos turning around at the end of the first Avengers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Just the
Like one
first-
little-
And we
one
have
little
to
reveal
wait.
and
The
that's it.
first tiny little seed
I wouldn't
setting up the next 10 years of movies.
That would be okay, but I think one of the big draws to this longer form of character stories is that these shows don't have to be like, they can feed into the wider Avengers without being focused on the villain as much. So like the Avengers movies are always going to be focused more on the villains. Avengers 1 is focused very much on Loki. Avengers Age of Ultron is obviously Ultron, and then Infinity War and Endgame are both very focused on Thanos. These shows can be focused on the individual characters. So that's why I wouldn't hate it if at the end of this you got a small little snippet of Agnes or Agatha saying, "For you, Lord Mephisto," or something equally corny. I wouldn't be upset about it, but I think that would be better served as the ending to the next Avengers movie or even Multiverse of Madness, rather than in these smaller, contained stories.
Okay, so in the complete opposite direction of how you feel about that.
And-
To me, the big draw of the stories we're getting right now in these long form, shows that are really so. It's just that they're so like tied intrinsically into the cinematic universe.
Mhm.
Like so, it feels more like, okay, so we were sold when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. came out on the idea that it was part of the same universe.
Yeah.
And I thought things that happened in the show would affect things that happened in the movies, but it
Mhm.
only went one way,
Yeah.
and it was disappointing, and I didn't feel like I needed to watch it anymore.
Yeah.
At
'Cause
first,
you didn't.
yeah, and you
That's-
didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't.
That's
either.
the same.
And I
That's
thought
what I
you
was
did.
pointing
I
out.
thought you'd be, if you didn't catch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you're missing something from these movies.
And
you know?
she made an excellent point.
I think I was just talking about that same thing with him, that the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and the Netflix had to be their own little universe and couldn't really influence the direction of the MCU, whereas this
Right.
is just is a long form MCU movie.
Yes.
This is
Yeah.
the beginning of Phase 4. When you go onto Disney Plus, this is on the Phase 4
Right, exactly.
playlist versus
And that's the whole
Agents of
S.H.I.E.L.D.
S.H.I.E.L.D. is
appeal
not.
to me, basically.
Yeah,
It's like
Agents of
the
S.H.I.E.L.D.'s
fact
not
that we
even
even
on
want
there.
to tear
Exactly.
this apart and
Which-
analyze all
Mhm.
all
Here's
these
the
little
thing.
details.
I
'Cause it
like
will
Agents
matter.
of S.H.I.E.L.D. 1
Will
through
matter.
4, but I'm sorry, what?
no, I'm just
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like
4
Agents of
people
S.H.I.E.L.D.
talking.
1 through 4. Everything after that was relatively worthless to me, and truth be told, I
I'm
was
actually gonna go
hugely-
back and watch it because Pam loved it so much.
I
Yeah, she's hurt right now.
look.
Season 7 was probably one of the most amazing things I've seen.
But it wasn't what we were sold on, like exactly
I
what
don't
he
have to-
said.
But see, I don't care about
And-
it because I don't care about that.
No, and that's
But
fair.
now you
And
do,
and you're
isn't it gonna be disheartening to know? Is it disheartening to know it's not even canon anymore? And then
I don't
B,
care about that.
it's
I
like-
don't care about that.
And
like
here's
the
the
idea
thing,
that
but
it just
the-
won't intertwine with all this. Like if you really loved it, you wouldn't want it to be.
No, to
part
me,
of
it could
this.
be a standalone TV show. It was
Okay.
one of the
And it
best
is now.
final
Yeah, yeah.
seasons that I've
Yeah.
ever seen in my entire
For
life.
her,
Oh,
it was
well.
come for the canon, stay for the Coulson.
and
Oh my God, stay for the Coulson.
But
is
to be
mine.
fair, Coulson's such a fantastic character,
character,
played
yeah.
by an excellent actor.
Mhm.
It was so. I mean, and
It
Joss
just-
Whedon, that character was so good, and to have him killed off in that first movie for nothing more than shock value.
No,
I have
no,
opinions
again,
on
it
that,
wasn't.
but-
It wasn't. It was to.
draw them together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
The motivation.
Joss Whedon does that a lot.
Oh,
and
Joss
then
Whedon will kill somebody off in a
but then
second.
he comes back and he says, "Oh, but it was all for a reason," and that I don't like that. I like Joss Whedon's longer form stories, like I like Dollhouse, I like Firefly, obviously, but I have a problem with him killing a character for what is immediate shock value and then coming back later and saying, no, it was all for a reason.
So, have you watched Firefly and Serenity?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know I was gonna.
Wait, I
end
just
this, but-
want to. You've heard this in the past. You may have forgotten it, but I just want to confess this sin to everybody who's listening right now. that I saw Serenity first, and I didn't know Firefly.
Same.
Me too.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
But my friend.
So, oh wait,
No.
are we
No.
literally all of us saw? Okay, sorry. I saw the train job and then nothing else, and then saw Serenity and
I
went
saw
back and
Serenity
watched all the
So all
rest.
of us saw Serenity through. But I'd seen Buffy all the way through, and my best friend at the time was there, and she had been watching Buffy from all my DVDs, and she's like, I can't believe you actually waited a whole week in between times
yeah.
to see these things, which is,
Oh,
by
back
the
in
way,
the
part of-
ancient days.
Well, back in the nowadays,
part of
too.
what-
Yeah, now.
What fascinates me about Wanda is the anticipation is great. But
Oh,
we
yeah.
were in the theater, and she, just with Wash, she's just like, oh my god, how could you?
Yeah, right.
She's
Yeah,
like
just like-
screaming it, and I'm just
And-
going,
And Joss.
I looked at her
Yeah,
and I
it's one of
went,
the characters, but
no, I felt the same way, but I just looked at her and I'm like, it's Joss.
It's Joss Whedon.
You
Joss
know
Whedon
that that's gonna happen.
does that.
You know that
All
he's
the
gonna kill
time.
somebody. You just didn't.
It's
feel
like
it going along, and you-
when we watched
But here's
A Force Awakens, and you were like, "How could they?" And I went, "That was literally in his contract. If I play this character again,
Off-
I want him
off
killed
topic.
off."
but but you see it
decided
again.
it's-
See, I would be willing to accept that Coulson was a death for a noble cause, and it wasn't just Joss Whedon going for the shock value if he didn't immediately do it again in the next movie with Quicksilver. Quicksilver's
But
death
Quicksilver-
was shock value.
But it
No,
had to be-
it was
had
a
to be
licensing
Fox.
necessity.
that's what it felt
It
like.
was
Yeah, more
Fox.
like that.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it
They
was.
did
It was
feel like that.
Fox.
It
Then
felt like
why
they're
can they
we're not
keep
gonna
Scarlet
arguing
Witch?
this.
Because they were all apparent.
They
From
could
what I
only have
heard, they
one.
were only
They
allowed to
could
have
only-
one
they-
coming out of
seriously,
Ultron.
I know, I
They
know,
could only
but,
have one, and
but that
And that's why
And that
Quicksilver
his-
was in
his-
the
Yeah, because that
other
one was
films.
a lot
His
cheaper.
was-
Like Coulson hurt more.
it was
Yeah.
Coulson
Coulson
hurts
hurt.
more because that's what Josh Whedon's good at.
Yeah.
Joss
No,
Whedon's
but
good
he
at hurting
didn't
you.
do that with Quicksilver. Really,
Quicksilver
like,
didn't
No.
hurt at all. I
Nobody
didn't
cared
I
care
don't know,
about
it hurt me. I
But only
love
'cause
that
he
version of
matters
Quicksilver.
You
as a
loved
character
Sparky the
in,
dog, so it was hard to see him
Yes,
die.
I did. I love Sparky.
All right.
So one last thing, real quick. Or what were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna do one last thing real quick.
Oh,
Alright,
So you
I
do
have
your
one
one last
real
thing.
quick. No,
I just want to know what the
One last
what
thing.
everybody
Six
thinks.
last things.
What everybody thinks the cameo is gonna. Who idea for the cameo? They said it's huge.
If okay,
Becky
huge
said
at this
that-
point.
Becky says it's somebody he's always wanted to work with. And
If-
Elizabeth Olsen has said huge.
If it's the thing is, to me, pulling in Quicksilver from another.
I thought that was the huge
Absolutely
cameo,
huge.
was Quicksilver. I
It's
thought
not.
that
So-
qualified
They
to
have-
me as the huge cameo.
And
they've said
I
it's
thought
not.
it
That's what I
was done.
thought.
No,
So
they
if
did say
that's
it's not.
not,
I know, but like,
So how
when-
much
then
think
it's
it's
got to
gonna
be something even bigger than that. And I'm thinking it's got to be, like, I know it's not going to be, but like Deadpool. It's going to be something
What?
that's so huge.
well, they did get Deadpool, and the next Deadpool
They
movie
have.
is MCU.
yeah.
But
So-
It's got to be
no.
something bigger
And
than
it's not
just the
Doctor
fact that
Strange.
X-Men now exist in this universe.
It's Reed Richards. I don't know who's playing him. It's Reed Richards.
Is it gonna be John?
So that's the thing. This
Oh,
role.
God,
It'd be amazing.
cast John Krasinski in that role.
That's what everyone's
Mm.
saying. That's
Now, if it was that, I'd be happy. I don't know anything about it, but I love him, so I'd be
And Emily Blunt as in the Invisible Woman,
So-
I'd lose my mind.
I would. Take my money
So
now.
Jim from The Office would be in this show twice.
yes.
Yeah, right. True that. Because
I-
Drew, he was
Yes,
Agent
yes.
Jim.
Oh yes, okay.
I
Look,
thought you were.
this is something we'll
And
discuss.
see,
I was gonna
after
say
the
I haven't even
recording
seen
is
The
done.
Office, and I just know about that.
I'm not a big fan of The Office.
Yeah, I've not
Okay,
watched it either,
so
I
here's the
don't
thing.
know.
When we were
That's
talking
what
about
I'm
Reed
saying about The Office,
Richards, it made me think of something, and this is kind of the thing I want to close out on. Is who is the next Thanos? Who's the next big bad going to be?
My money's on Mephisto.
Okay, see, because we were just talking about Reed Richards and the fact that if they do end up bringing him in, Galactus could be the next thing
I've
that
heard
they
that
work
Galactus
toward.
Could be the next big bad.
I think he feels too similar to Thanos for now.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Like-
the way
like
he's
maybe
been
save
described to me.
Maybe,
Well, but
maybe,
also-
yeah.
Yeah.
But also Galactus.
Hey, I knew enough to like
Yeah.
participate in that part of that.
Solid. Galactus feels so in the comics. Galactus is more of a force of nature than an evil planning bad guy.
Right.
Yeah.
He like it's even been talked about in the comics that Galactus doesn't even necessarily want. For the people who are listening to this who don't know who Galactus is the World Eater. He devours planets, and it has been talked
For
about.
sustenance.
Yeah, for sustenance. He's not doing it because he's evil and he wants to kill
Right.
people. In fact, he specifically gives the Silver Surfer his powers so that he can go to planets and tell them, get off this planet because Galactus is gotta come and eat it.
Wow,
And so,
What a great guy.
so
Yeah.
Galactus is a great antagonist to fight against. He would be difficult
It is hard to do long
to
form. I
make
see
him
what you mean.
to make him a longer term.
There's not a lot of planning that goes in.
Unless you
like
introduce
multiple
Silver
tries,
Surfer
like
very
Thanos
early.
would have.
Or we're universe hopping.
Yeah.
Or universe hopping.
And I think that we're multiverse hopping, so we need a villain, multiverse villain. Does that make sense?
Well,
what I'm
yeah,
saying?
but Mephisto
Like,
can do
that's what I'm
that.
saying.
Okay, so
Mephisto,
fulfills
that's
that
what-
role.
And I
Int-
think we need an evil
I like
bad
Cool
guy
idea.
that's mad, that has some
Do you-
maybe magical, not magical,
No, yeah.
but you know what I mean?
Who else?
No,
Yeah,
magic is a
like-
Alright,
perfect term
big
for
bad.
Mephisto. Magic is perfect.
Just go down the list of who else Tony Stark wronged. That's gonna be the next big
Yeah.
bad.
But it's going to be someone who it was
No,
a waiter. He
It-
shorted him on a tip, and
No.
now he has.
Somebody
now
that-
he's like Dr. Manhattan
no.
level powerful.
No,
Somebody
see,
that Tony
I think-
Stark looked at the wrong way.
No, see, I think that's going to be Mephisto, and Mephisto's going to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm destroying your world because Tony Stark, something,"
me.
and then just like that's the reason. Yeah, it's Tony Stark.
In that-
Tony
Jump,
Stark
jumped me
undoing.
in line.
Tony Stark
at a
doing the
food
second
truck.
snap broke my rules, so I'm gonna kill all of you. Like it's gonna be
Yeah.
something like that.
Could be.
Well,
So,
you have one more thing?
my thought
Six
on the,
more things.
No. This is just again on the big bad thing of like, of something big and bad enough to have to move us to a new reality, would be like Marvel Zombies, where it becomes a threat that is so
That's
It's
too
looming.
niche.
It's gonna
You
be the-
have to go to a new universe and start again.
I get where you're going with that. Too niche.
It's gonna be the
Even
organotechnic
for
virus.
Marvel's,
Maybe not in the
I
next
know
10
what
years,
it's
but
too niche.
going
it's a
forward
subset
and
of
forward
Marvel.
and forward and forward.
It's a
Niche
subset.
work.
Well, yeah, but it's
But-
this is
yeah.
even too far. This is a subset of Marvel Comics that literally the whole story is that a zombie virus breaks out and takes over all of the superheroes except for like a very
And they
slattery
still
few.
hold
So that probably
volition.
one or two will be straight. Not
Oh,
necessarily
I
like
see that being more of a what if in the what if show.
I think it could be a way to
I'm
bring
so excited
characters
about
in
that.
from another universe, that they're escaping from that. Whatever, like imagine an Avengers Zombies,
I
where
think-
people like some Avengers who maybe would have been dead in this universe or have already died, they come through and they're like, we need to find a way to stop this, and then they end up,
I think I'd be
solving
more,
the problem, cutting the tie, and then we get these new characters in
I think
because
I'd
of
be
it.
more on board with that idea, not as zombies, but more of the Cancerverse.
Okay.
For those of you who do not know what I'm talking about,
yes.
the Cancerverse is it is so you know that Marvel exists as multiverses. There's 616, which is the main.
That's the Cancerverse.
Yes, yes,
sometimes
it
feels
is.
like it, but there's
It's the
fan
Fantastic
force
Four.
thing. It's a
It's
terrible
Fantastic.
reboot. So there's 616, which is the mainline comics universe. The MCU is universe number 9999999 or something.
Oh yeah.
And within all of those multiverses, I can't remember what exact number it is, there is a specific universe where a singular being that has no name eats, kind of like how Ego in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, how he does that thing,
That thing.
where something, that thing being
He
consuming the universe and
he do
making
that
all of the
thing.
universe him. That succeeds in that
So that's
universe,
Marvel.
and it becomes what is called the Cancerverse.
Okay.
And its goal is to then spread to other multiverses
But doesn't
and consume and
The
grow.
technical
everyone
organotechnic
becomes
virus.
undying, right?
Yes, but they become a hive mind. So it's a singular being
Nice.
inhabiting
Lord.
bodies
Yeah,
as
there it
quote
is.
unquote
Well,
cancer.
just like
Okay, weren't they?
Lord,
Wasn't
the boy.
they were
We
the
had high
Revengers there, right?
See, I'm thinking of that too.
I think they were still the Avengers.
That's
The Marvel universes don't tend to change the names of the team. The Revengers is a team that exists in 616 continuity.
Oh, gotcha. And I think alternate universe. I think Earth 1099 is where you file your taxes if you're within the Marvel universe.
And Earth
big cameo
W9 is something to do with employment. I don't
Yeah.
know. Everybody has a
All
job
right.
there. Everybody has a job.
Marvel 616, that's like a show on Disney Plus where they're showing different things. One of them is cosplayers. One of them is people who design toys. I've
They're
seen
they're,
them.
they're
Yeah,
got
I've seen
short
Oh my God,
documentaries.
they're just
Yeah.
amazing. One of
And
them's the guy
They're
trying
really
to write
Six is
the
one that
one
crosses over
trying to
with,
write the.
I haven't seen all of them.
One of them
so
is the
I've
guy
seen some.
trying to write Iron Man 2020, and he's
Oh.
got a massive writer's block, and it's just fascinating
Jeez.
to watch process.
No,
So-
but I haven't seen any of that.
Sorry, Joel, throw that one out again. Just,
Oh, rehash my joke. Ready? Oh, and I can't do it naturally.
What just happened?
He rewound
He's
himself.
trying to rewind himself.
Very natural. This is the first time I'm ever saying this in my life. Oh, and Marvel 626. That's the one where they cross over with Lilo and Stitch's
I
universe,
love-
right?
Yes,
Oh, no,
absolutely.
no,
Okay,
stop. No
on
Lilo
that-
and Stitch, no.
on
we
that-
have to leave out the Lilo and Stitch too.
on that,
Oh,
Uh,
and if you like Westview, there is a great merchandise from the 50s and 60s on Teespring.
Specifically for Westview.
for Westview. Yes.
Remember, WV, Westview.
Oh, shoot, we got to plug in the first episode? There it is. Listen to
Yeah,
this,
I mean,
listen to this.
yeah.
That was the plug. You heard that?
Yeah, I heard it plug it in.
You were just a
Yeah.
Foley artist. like,
You
just
didn't know
the
this,
talent,
but,
the raw
um,
talent.
Well,
Oh my gosh, why can't I remember his name? The guy who was in all the Police Academy movies.
Yeah.
Michael.
That's
Michael
another
Winslow.
series- That's another series I haven't seen.
I've
That's
seen
another
him in real
series.
life, by the way.
Well, that's going to be the after we're done with Marvel movies.
We're
gonna
gonna
do
move to
Police
Police
Academy. Yep. All right.
Well, that'll
So-
still be better than the DCEU.
And that's coming from one of the bigger DC fans here. So
One of-
I respect
yeah.
that.
No, biggest
Look, I liked Man of Steel. I I that. That
I
was
liked
the
it
good.
at first.
Well, what?
Okay, let's save this
All
for
right.
next time.
Bye.
Yeah, so this has been the I'm Invested podcast. Thank you so much for listening in.
Do it again. Say how, James?
Yeah, that's what this has been James.
Emily?
Michael.
I've been Pam.
And that's it. Bye, guys.
Last person.
That's
And
it.
that's
That's
Joel,
it.
very bitter Joel.
And that's it. There's only 4 people in this room and a magnificent soundboard.
Yep. Good night, folks. Enough said.